I'm back. It's me, Tiffany the Budgetnista Aliche, your favorite financial educator, and this is Money Glow from Yahoo Finance, where I help you debunk your money myths and misunderstandings. You like that alliteration? I know you do. Well, this episode, we're going to talk about the true cost of success when it comes to going to school or getting an education. Should you go to trade school? Should you go to college? What are the costs of both? Picture this. You're 18 years old. And you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed because someone told you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you have to make this huge financial decision. What direction do you go to? Do you decide there's a trade that I want to learn and how much will that cost you? Do you decide, you know what, I'm going to go the traditional route. I'm going to go away to college. But what if you don't use that degree? So many big choices, and they do cost money. There's a study done by educationdata.org, and they found that the average person holding student loan debt owes $37,000. That's a lot of money. And over 43 million adults hold federal student loan debt. So this is not a choice to be taken lightly. No, it's a choice that costs. And you might be a parent watching, you might be a student, you might be a favorite auntie, I don't know, and you're trying to help someone in your life make this choice, but you don't have to make it alone, not while I'm here. No, because today, in this episode, we're going to have a guest in the studio who is a career coach. She is a 3-time best-selling author. She is just a bad mamma jamma. Invite into the studio Laura Gassner Otting. Yes, you might have seen Laura on Good Morning America, on the Today Show. You might have seen her in Oprah Daily, Harvard Business Review. Oh, maybe not there? Okay, maybe Bill Clinton's White House, where she helped to shape AmeriCorps. I told you she was a bad mamma jamma. Well, in today's episode, Laura's going to help us to navigate what choices we have available when it comes to seeking financial success through education. Trade school, regular school, let's decide. Laura, welcome into the stew and come on in. I told you we're going to have a guest in the stew today. We have Laura who, we're going to talk about Laura like, should we be going to college or trade school? Or both, or neither? I just feel like this is a great conversation we're going to have today.
Absolutely. I'm excited to get into it.
So let's keep it easy for people who don't know. They're like, trade school. Like, what exactly is a trade?
Okay, so a trade is a skilled occupation. You get very particular training for a very particular skill, and then you do that particular job, as opposed to this sort of expansive career where you may be doing all sorts of different things every single day.
Okay. So, for example, plumber, right?
Plumbing, construction, HVAC, anything that involves very specific technical training that you get in a sort of a licensing and certification type of way.
So there seems to be, because I'm on like Instagram a lot, and there seems to be this big shift about young people's attitudes toward going to college.
Yeah.
Like, what do you attribute that to?
Well, I think it's a couple things. Okay. So I think the first thing is that it's higher education, the cost of it is absolutely exorbitant. So people are taking on all this student loans. It turns out that the average graduate graduates with $37,000 of debt, and 40% of graduates say that either they're unemployed or not employed in the thing for which they got the degree. So suddenly that $37,000 does not seem really attractive. Mm-hmm. At the same time, there's so much growth in the trades because you have the traditional trades, you know, plumbers, electricians, HVAC, and a lot of those people are retiring. So there are a lot of opportunities and openings right now. And then you have all this new technology. So you have like electric cars, you have solar panels, et cetera, and there's a lot of growth that's in that area. So it turns out that there's about 200,000 of these new trade jobs that are going to appear in the next 10 years. So the time is right to be able to do that.
So what is it that you think young people are looking for, right? So they're like, because ultimately, I feel like the Zs are not opposed to working, but to your point, opposed to working kind of like in this corporate space.
Yeah, so a lot of us non-Zs came out of the pandemic going, well, when life returns to normal, is the normal I'm really returning to the life I actually want? And it was a big resounding no for a lot of people. And so a lot of people started thinking about, well, what's this definition of success that I've always had, which was always like, get the right grades, go to the right school, go to college, right? That was the definition. And it turns out a lot of people who the Zs see, ahead of them aren't that happy. And they're like, well, I don't want to do that because that didn't work. And so instead, they're thinking, well, what do I want to do that gives me this great work-life balance? We did this assessment where we have nearly 10,000 responses from 74 different countries across every demographic and every industry. And what we found is that the one thing that people wanted more of after the pandemic was actually control. They want to control about when they work, where they work, how they work, what they get paid to work. And we're seeing a lot more of these gig jobs. We're seeing a lot more contingent jobs and a ton more trade jobs because the people in those jobs actually get to have some control over where they work, when they work, how they work. They get entrepreneurship, that get to be their own boss. So it's just a whole new definition of what employment can look like.
I think that answers kind of like some of the question about like what are the benefits or the advantages of trade school. But I saw like, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I saw this meme that like the trade entrepreneurs are like some of the fastest growing demographic of millionaires.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And also because they start earlier. So when you graduate from college, you start making like entry level income and you're going to grow and you're going to grow. And eventually you may end up out earning people that are in the trades. But people coming out of trade schools immediately start earning usually union protected wages, right? They're usually getting paid a lot of money. If you've ever had your HVAC break in the middle of July, you know it costs a lot of money to have some guy show up or some woman show up on a Saturday, right? They can charge a lot of money. And so immediately they're starting to make more so that they can start putting money away sooner. They're graduating without debt. It's a shorter program. It doesn't cost as much money. So they're already coming in without that financial burden. And then they graduate and they can start putting money away earlier and earlier. So the compound interest of their earnings grows.
Incredible. Because you're right. I remember I had a friend of mine who was like he worked for like Amtrak on the trains. And he was in his 20s at the time, and he was making really good money relative to his age.
Yes. Now, the problem is that they don't continue to grow in the same way that people who go to college. So if you're thinking about the sort of long-term picture, you might also, the benefits of college are you've got the 4-year degree, you have a vast and broad liberal arts education, you create a relationship with a cohort of people who are all doing lots of different things. So there's other opportunities to grow and pivot and change as well. So there are benefits to both. And studies do show that people will earn more with a college degree than without one. But if you're thinking about maybe college isn't for me, maybe I don't really know what I want to study, you can go to trade school. And college is always there to go later. There's plenty of people who return back and use that as a pivot point.
So if someone is watching and they're like a parent or maybe even just someone who's in high school right now and they're just thinking to themselves, like, I'm trying to decide like what the next steps are, how would somebody financially start to prepare for trade school? Are there like scholarships? Is there money available? And then opposing that to how do you prepare for like to set aside for college? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think thinking through the economics of the reality of your economics. Like everybody has different numbers, and everybody has options of different student loan forgiveness afterwards, or scholarships before. So really figuring out what you want to do with the degree. I often tell people that they should spend a little bit of time thinking about what they actually want to do, what success looks like for them. And I tell them that there's 2 numbers. There's like the need to make number and the want to make number, right? So if you're going to graduate with a job that's very clear and you know that it's a fast growing, like if you are going into an engineering field and you want to go to college for engineering, there's tons of jobs in that. So you know that you're going to be highly employable. If you're, say, one of my kids and you're getting an art history degree, not a lot of jobs in that.
Yeah.
So, your next job is going to be graduate school. So you're looking at a very different financial picture when you're coming. So I think thinking through why you want to get that degree before you start investing the money and what that need to make number is for you to be able to actually put food on the table, pay your rent, et cetera, and not overextending yourself in terms of the loans that you're going to take out without a really clear picture of how the career that you want to follow is going to actually pay back that loan.
I think I just remember thinking like, I don't know, I just want to go to college and get a degree. I don't know what I want to do after. And I think so many kids don't attribute what they actually do in school to what they can actually make.
Right. But did anybody ever say to you like, well, maybe college isn't an option? They were just like, the definition of success is college.
Absolutely.
Right. So like we never stopped and thought, maybe I want to go, maybe I don't want to go. Nobody ever said to you, what is your definition of success? What is interesting to you? It may be that your definition of success is having a job that you have very specific hours. You know exactly what you're going to make. You know the training that you need to get, and you want to be home to like have dinner with your kids every single night. Great, awesome. It may be that your definition of success is that you want to, go to college, go to law school, grind away on the partner track, never see your kids, but actually make so much money that your kids get to make different decisions than you got to make because they have more financial freedom and flexibility. And the truth is that every one of these definitions, no matter where you are, is right. We just don't ask people. And we tell our students, they're 15, 16, 17 years old, pick a major, pick a college, pick a trade, go. And we go, okay. but we don't have a frontal lobe when we're 15, 16, 17. So we make these decisions that are going to affect the very rest of our lives. And we literally don't have the capacity to make a good one. And then we're like, oh, and also, by the way, here's sign here for all these student loans, right? So we don't actually give ourselves a chance to stop. And so my advice to young people who are thinking about what they should do is to stop for a minute and think about your definition, not just the one that a teacher handed you or a parent handed you or some celebrity handed you, but what actually excites you? What's interesting to you? How do you, not just what do you want to make, but how do you want to live your life? Who do you want to be in your life? And then what does that life cost? Both in terms of your time, in terms of your energy, in terms of money.
So this is the shift that you're seeing, like when you're speaking to young people, even parents, because I feel like we see the shift obviously in young people. They're just like, I want to be happy.
Yes.
I want peace. But do you see shift in like the parents of these young people being open to having their children not choose what has been the traditional path of success?
Yes, especially because these are the very parents that are still struggling with their own student loans and who are realizing that throughout the pandemic, they were not fulfilled in what they were doing. And they left thinking, well, maybe I should do something different. Maybe I should change. And they can't because they are so just trapped by the loans that they took out. And so they don't want to do that for their kids.
Oh my gosh, Laura, this conversation is so enriching, but hold that thought because we're going to take a quick break and you stay there because after we pay some quick bills, we're going to be right back with more Laura, more trade school, more college. And we are back. So Laura, what were you saying again about
I think we also live in a society now where we are seeing people manifest their values through their work much more. Like before 2016, you would see like Paris Hilton like laying out on the top of a convertible, eating like a sloppy hamburger during the Super Bowl. And then after 2016, suddenly all these companies were falling all over themselves trying to show their values, right? We saw all the sort of every possible political ideology you can have on display during the next year's Super Bowl ad. So suddenly we have been shown that there's this opportunity to reflect your values through not just where you spend your money, but where you spend your productive hours of your day, where you work. And the Gen Z is not going back, right? And Gen Alpha certainly is not going back. They expect that this work should contribute to their lives in some way, not just how much they make, but like the values that they're manifesting every single day, who they are, what their career trajectory is going to look like, and whether that's working in the trades and feeling like they're sort of hands-on and in touch and maybe an entrepreneur themselves or working, within a union setting. That's one definition that they like. And so if that's one of the ones that is interesting to them, then that's so much more of a viable option now. And at the same time, we also see venture capital funds that are, they're investing left and right in trade schools because they know how much they're going to grow. I mean, the 200,000 jobs I mentioned earlier, that's just in the construction industry. So imagine how it's going to grow when we think about the solar panels and the clean tech and electric cars and all the rest of the new technology that we haven't even imagined yet.
Well, if somebody's watching now and they're just like, I went the traditional route, I hate it here. I want to pivot. How can they pivot? Do they have to go back to school if you're like a little bit older? Can they consider a trade at 40, 45? Is it too late? Like where if somebody who's like, I don't want to navigate how I've been navigating, what are the choices that are available for someone older?
So I'd say if somebody's listening to Yahoo Finance, they're obviously thinking about money. So the first thing they should think about is what's the need to make number, right? Like what do they need to make to put money on the table, and can they make that number during the period of time that they're in this pivot? And then there's the what's the want to make number, right? So everything in between the need to make and the want to make number is where you're going to sacrifice, how you're going to spend your time. Are you willing to take on a second shift of a job so that you can go back to school during the day, et cetera? And then maybe start doing some networking, have some informational interviews with people who are in that trade or in that career. To have a conversation about, well, it looks this way on the bright, shiny outside in our social media world where everything looks bigger than it actually is in real life, and have a conversation. Like, what does it really look like? What does it really look like? What does it feel like to work here? What are the opportunities for career advancement? What do you look for in the people that you're trying to hire? So I know what I need to do during my pivot, right? So start to have those kinds of conversations. And those informational interviews allow you to be smarter about the networks, the knowledge, the trends, and whatever trade or career you want to go into. So those are the first two things I would advise.
Is there like a specific trade in particular that you see? I mean, so you said construction, but is there any other trade that seems to be exploding with opportunity that maybe people are not thinking about?
Certainly all the clean tech.
Okay,
Right.
so what is that?
So clean tech are people that install solar panels, people that are fixing electric cars, there are people, wind turbines, right? Anything that has to do with green energy and clean tech will be huge moving into the future because we're just seeing more and more. I mean, there's the electric car is just in and of itself. Most car companies are saying that they want to have all electric fleets by certain dates. And so who are going to fix those? Right? It's not the mechanics that are fixing our gasoline engines. We've got to teach people how to do this. And so there's so many new technologies that certainly people that grew up with technology every single day are going to be much more comfortable thinking about and figuring out and working with the interfaces for.
Well, if you had to do it all over again, so like, did you do the traditional route?
I went to college and then I went to law school because I thought I'm going to be a lawyer. I had a fourth grade teacher who was like, Laura, you're really argumentative. You should be a lawyer. And I was like, well, I think you're wrong because I'm argumentative, right? So, but then I proceeded to put myself on a path to law school because my parents were like, great, law school, you'll be a lawyer. That's a career we know, right? That's like an actual job. And then I saw, all the lawyers on TV and it seemed like exciting and sexy. And I was like, I'll be one of them. And then I got to law school and I was that student, the ones that are called upon on the first day and ask question after question after question. That was me. Right. So I immediately, of course, hated law school. And so I dropped out.
Okay.
It was horrible. I was like, this is not place I should be. I just hadn't thought about it. And I dropped out and joined Bill Clinton's presidential campaign and ended up doing advance. Like I went around the country. I put on political rallies and he ended up in the White House. I ended up in the White House. I helped create AmeriCorps.
Wow.
Which is, the program where people can take a
Yes.
year and pay college tuition by doing community service. And so, I had thought that I had this idea of what success would look like and who I was going to be and who my parents approved of and all of that. And then I got there and realized I had like organ rejection failure of being there.
If you had to pick a trade, imagine yourself 16, 17 years old, and it's like, there's no such thing as college. What would you have maybe like been interested in exploring?
If I had to pick a trade, I probably would have gone into, I think, painting.
Okay.
For sure, painting, because it's creative. You can do it inside. You can spend some time outside. I think it's incredibly scalable. You can continue to get better and better and better at different techniques. So yeah, I think I would probably go into painting. What about you? What would you do?
I don't know, honestly. Like my sister's an engineer. And so, I just always was curious how things worked. But yeah, I just went to school because I was told to, obviously,
Right.
And even when I chose my major, I remember I was like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I'll choose business because I'm 18 and I don't know what else to choose.
You're like, I'll choose business. Seems like it involves money. I
Yeah.
like money. I'll pick business, right? Like that's how we chose.
Can you imagine?
So even if you're like in the middle of your career, so we make this decision when we're super young and then we don't have the capacity to make a good one. And then we don't change our mind. And then we never give ourselves the grace to like go back and be like, maybe that person I thought I was 20 years ago or I was told I was 20 years ago is actually not who I am or maybe ever was, right? So we have to give ourselves this opportunity.
Yes. So that I did not know that you were in the White House because I've heard of AmeriCorps. I think we all have. And so what was that pivot like for you? And because somebody might be watching and say, well, I want to pivot, or I am currently in school and I want to drop out, but I'm kind of nervous. So what was that pivot like for you, like going to the White House and beyond?
Yeah, well, I spent the first 6 weeks there being paid all the idealism and ramen soup I could eat. So I would say the first thing that I would do is make sure that you're comfortable living with rats and roaches, because that's what I could afford in terms of my apartment. But to be more serious, really thinking about what will it cost, right? Do I have 6 months of savings? Like, lucky for me, this was in 1992, so 6 months of savings was like $12 in a bag of Doritos, right? So it was okay. But if you are a young person and you're not happy and you want to make a shift, you will never be as unencumbered, as willing to live in squalor, as willing to do the hard work, have as much energy, have as much of a plastic brain, right? To be able to learn and grow. This is the moment. So don't wait, is what I would tell people, because the pivot is super difficult. But when you're young and you're naive and you're like, I think it could be successful. I don't really know. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And so, there's a great study that I quote in my most recent book, Wonder Hell, that it's the coin flip study. And the coin flip study says, if you're suffering with a big decision, you're struggling, you don't know, should I take the job? Should I get married? Should I buy the house? And you don't know whether you should do it or not, you flip a coin. And if you flip a coin, the coin says heads, go for it, versus tails, stay still. People who get heads and go for it, they say 2 months later, they're not any worse off.
Okay.
And 6 months later say they're substantially better off, even if they say it was the wrong decision.
Okay.
Right? So they say they're substantially better off 6 months later, even if it was the wrong decision, because the process of making that decision and learning from it and meeting people along the way and discovering what you actually care about and what you're actually willing to work for actually teaches you what you want to do. And so it puts you on the right track. So if you're stuck in analysis paralysis, go do something. Action beats stagnation.
Oh, I love that, action beats stagnation. So if someone is listening, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given when it comes to like a life impacting choice? Like, especially when it comes to choosing the path to higher education or not. Did anyone when you were younger kind of just like give you this kind of bullet in your back that made you say, okay, this is the direction, or give you the courage to leave law school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best piece of advice I got around that was not to follow my passion. It was that follow your passion is terrible advice.
Okay.
Because we're told follow your passion, which means I just have to find my passion and then follow it and everything will be great, which means the minute things get hard, the minute it's difficult, the minute we get a bad grade, the minute we get a rejection, we're like, oh, it must not be my passion. I should do something else. And then we like search around for like, what's the next thing that people on Instagram tell me is my passion, or what's the TikTok telling me is my passion? And instead of saying like, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? I would say, what would you do if you knew for sure you would fail, and yet you would do it over and over and over until you got it right, because that's your passion. So for young people who are thinking like, do I go to trade school? Do I go to college? I would say, what do you want to beat your head against the wall to figure out? Like, what is that interesting to you that it's worth sucking for a little while at it, right? Like, is it worth that? Because if it's not, like, shouldn't your passion be worth a little struggle, like a little difficulty?
I love that. Laura, thank you so much for coming.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me.
Well, I always like to, the teacher in me, it likes to kind of do a wrap up. So you're going to tell me if I get an A or not, what I learned today from Laura. Are you guys ready? Okay. This is what student Tiffany learned today. That the path to success does not always happen via traditional education, meaning like going to school, right? And that trade school is a very viable option that actually might, in the end, make you more money because you get to start earlier making money. And that in the end, what you choose to do, really certainly there are benefits to going to college, but some of the cons of going to college might be the expense, and especially if you're not going to use that degree in the long run. And trade school it's a little bit shorter. And with trade school, maybe you can find the thing that you're truly passionate in, and you're able to do it and make additional money outside of whatever job that you might have. That trade school really might be the avenue toward growing wealth, especially these days. If you're a parent, consider really creating a safe space where your child can make the decision about trade school or going traditional college, because these days that college is not the only way. It's just one of the ways. And last but not least, that if you're not sure what to do, flip that coin and then make the final decision and stick with it, because you're not going to be better off or worse off from making that choice on your own. Did I get it right?
You got it. Awesome. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay. Well, again, we wanted to ask the question, what is the true cost of education? Is trade school worth it? I think we answered that question today. I'm Tiffany, the Budgetnista Aliche, with Money Globe from Yahoo Finance. I'm here every single Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to find me, you can find me at yahoofinance.com. You can also find me wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want any sort of financial help, a little hand-holding, head on over to getgoodwithmoney.com. And remember this, there are so many avenues towards success. You have to be open to what it might look like for you. Until then, I'll see you next week.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.